but I haven't spent a lot of
Did everybody sign in the sign-in sheet? Please. If I don't have your email address, if you're not receiving emails from me reminding you of our classes, be sure and put your email address on there.
Everybody signed in?
And we're going to get started. If you'll look at the front of your packet tonight, first of all, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Melissa Barker. I'm the Houston County archivist and a professional genealogist, and we do our free genealogy classes once a month. Tonight, and for the month of March, it's Women's History Month, for those of you that may not have known that. Women are a very important part of our history. Without them, we wouldn't be here. All right. That's deep, I know. Women actually are very important to our ancestry and to our research. I think when we get started, one of the things that I talk about is the fact that sometimes we can get stuck on the fact that we want to research our male ancestors so we can see how far we can get back. Well, in reality, our female ancestors can enrich our research just as much. So don't forget the women. And so I found that today on the internet. I thought that was pretty neat. If you look at the next page, or the first page, one thing I like to do is provide you with some useful genealogy websites. The first one I put on here will make really good sense a little bit later. I put the DAR Patriot Lookup Service site. I didn't go through Helen specifically, but I believe this is a site where you can freely search for patriots.
You can. It's www.dar.org.
I went to their site and I couldn't find that particular page, so I just found the...
It's GRS. It's under the...
Okay.
It's called GRS
Okay.
on there. You click genealogy.
Okay.
And then there's a GRS lookup. You can look up by the patriot name or by a descendant's name.
Okay. Well, I actually put the link that takes you right to that page to do the search. So, even if you don't think that you may, unless you are only a first generation person into the country, if you don't even think you have ancestors, female ancestors that fought in the Revolutionary War, please do a search anyway. You never know. Because you don't know, like I said, when you get to female ancestors, it could be a family that you don't even know about yet, which is, I know that sounds weird, but you might have the surname, but you may not have researched them to the point where you'll think, oh wait, I can join the DAR. The next website is one I come across recently that is just awesome. It's the Sears Archives. You know the store, the Sears store? They actually have an archives online. You can look at catalogs, old catalogs. You can look at the old kit houses that they used to sell. You can, come on in. You can look at things that your female ancestors would have used on a daily basis. There you go, sweetie. When doing research on my female ancestors, I like to actually research some of the materials in their home, on their farm, things that they may have worked with that we don't even use today, just to get me to give an idea of what their life was like. So that's a really neat site to go check into. The next one is the American Women, a Gateway to Library of Congress Resources for the Study of Women's History and Culture in the United States. That is a pretty big...
Wow.
Well, it's a pretty big website. There's a lot of information there. I would just encourage you to go there and just look around. So in honor of female research, these are all pretty much kind of female related. The Sears probably has farming implements and things for men, but I like to look for the household stuff to see that we don't even use today. Like my 100-year-old vacuum cleaner that I have in the archives, that actually they still produce today. It's a Bissell. One of those push ones, you know. I actually have one. One was donated to archives. It looks just like what they make today, except it's all made of wood, and it still works. So Bissell's still good. And then I found out that they call it a Bissell from my northern friends. Now whether or not they called it that here in the South, but my northern friends told me they called it a Bissell.
A Bissell?
A Bissell. But I think that's a.
It could be a Bissell.
I don't know if that's a company name or
yes,
what.
That's a company.
Okay.
That's a brand name.
Okay. Brand name. Yeah. So, we are going to start with our class. First, I'm going to hand out to you a couple of funny things before we talk about our women in a serious way. This is, I actually just found this today, so I was glad. These are newspaper, not articles, advertisements or contributions. This first one I'm giving you was in the Indiana Gazette, June 27th, 1940. And I'm sorry if it's a little out of focus. These are notices that were published. The first one says, "My wife, Effie Adamson Burkett, having left my board without just cause, all persons are hereby warned not to harbor her on my account, as I will not be responsible for any bills contracted for by her, James Burkett, Altman, Pennsylvania." Gives a phone number.
Absolutely, we had those in the night.
I
Very recently. We had those in our paper.
And the next one, "My wife, Mrs. Annie Holmes Schultz, having left my board without just cause, all persons are hereby warned not to harbor her on my account, as I will not be responsible for any bills contracted for by her, W.R. Schultz, Indiana, Pennsylvania." So, yeah, they did do that. Mainly when they were going through a divorce. And actually, if you will notice, if you do this kind of research, it's mainly men who publish these, not women.
bet Miss Nanny,
No.
I bet Miss Annie Holmes Schultz would argue that without just cause. I bet there would be some
yeah.
argument on that.
About what year was this?
This is 1940. So yeah, it's not like 1800s. This next one is from the 1800s, and it's a little interesting. You have to remember, our women ancestors, up to a certain point, which has not been too long ago, did not have any rights or privileges. The man had total rights and privileges over her, and so it was very common for these kinds of things to be published. This is actually dated from September 26, 1850, published in the Burlington Hawkeye newspaper. I'll let everybody gets one. No, I can't remember which state this was in. No.
The two big Burlingtons.
I have to look it back up again. I didn't write the state down. Okay. It says, "A poet of Tonawanda, whose better half had absented herself from his domicile, thus warns the public against harboring or trusting her on his account." This is his little poem. "Eunice, my wife, has grown quite lewd, and left me in a lonesome mood. She's gone in spite of friends in church, and went to live with Timothy Murch. She left my board and took my bed. She carried off my meat and bread. Ye know therefore who read this paper, that since she has cut this reckless caper, I will not pay one single fraction for any debt of her contraction."
He spent some time on this.
It reminds me of the old tombstone, epitaphs that were put onto all of the different things.
So a lot heartbroken or I mean, come on.
But it really was not unusual for men to publish these things in the newspapers about their wives, ex-wives, women in their lives. Because like I said, women in this time period up until, I'm even going to say up until probably the 1960s. Would you say 60s? Their rights and privileges and things all came under their husband, and they didn't.
Yeah, I'd say after the Vietnam War,
Yeah.
people started.
Women's lib.
I mean, and also probably,
Women's lib. Yeah.
and I would say it depends on what part of the country you lived in too. I would say it depends on what part of the country you live in. But if you look at your handout, I'm going to start with the name of tonight's class is Honoring the Ladies, Researching Your Female Ancestors. I chose this for this month because it is National Women's Month, and also because lots of times genealogy researchers don't pay attention to their female ancestors as much. And so I always like to highlight this once a year to try to get you to thinking about your female ancestors. We pay attention to our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers, maybe our great-great-grandmothers, but then we tend to stop on the female side and just continue on with the male side because we want to see how far back we can get. Well, you can get far back on your female side too. So don't forget. You're still related to those people. It's
Yeah,
harder. I didn't say it was easy. It's harder.
It's harder.
That's why we tend to go with the males, because it's easier research. But don't forget the women, and don't be discouraged by it being hard, because you might be surprised by what you find. Our female ancestors are very important to our genealogy research and should be researched with as much gusto as our female ancestors. You might think that researching your female ancestors is not productive to your genealogy research. I would say that they are just as important, or in some cases more important than your male ancestors. This class is all about researching your female ancestors and the benefit this research can give you in your quest to research your family history. Start with what you have. My first advice to you is to start with what you have. If you've not been a student of researching your female ancestors, you may be surprised what you already have in your genealogy information. Collecting records and information on males, as you've been doing that, you may have inadvertently, not knowingly, collected female information. So go back through your information and reread. Obituaries, court documents, deeds, those things list females, and you may not have paid attention to them because you were only focusing on the males. So that's something you can do. One of the first things we can do to research our female ancestors is to look at what documents, records, photos, artifacts that we already have in our possession. If we have solely concentrated on our male ancestors, we may have not paid attention to the information in these records about our female ancestors. The next little heading, she was just a housewife myth. Sometimes, how many of you looked on those census records and it comes across and it says occupation, it says housewife or keeping house? Well, a lot of our female ancestors were just housewives. However, that doesn't mean that they didn't have a life. They did. Now, granted, it was probably taking care of children, taking care of their husband, taking care of the home, taking care of the farm. One person that comes to mind right away is Donald Bateman's grandmother. Her name was
Myrtle Clark Bateman.
Myrtle Clark Bateman. Her husband died
When my daddy was 5.
and she took care of, they had a large farm, did they not?
Right.
And she took care of that large farm on her own. And I've talked to Donald about it, and I'm always so amazed when he talks about, well, she used to do this and she used to take care of that. And one of the documents that I posted on the Facebook site was the Sears receipt where she had sold some possum hides to Sears.
As one does.
That's right, yes. Yes, sir.
Was that Bateman, was he related? Mr. T.E. Bateman used to have a store over there on that street.
Edgar and my grandfather were first cousins.
Just because census records or some other document describes your female ancestor as just a housewife, don't let that deter you from looking for other records. A lot of our female ancestors were housewives, but most of the time they lived full lives that could have included, and I listed some things, this is just some. She could have been a local volunteer in a local volunteer organization such as the Bethesda Mission here locally. I'll use things that we know today. But there were a lot more volunteer things in those days than there are today. They're kind of dying out today because people have to work more these days. Your female ancestor of yesteryear, I'd like to say, most likely would not have a job outside the home. If they did, that was really kind of unusual up to a certain point. So they would have taken care of the home, but yet they would still volunteer for things in their community. And those things would have generated records, either a membership list, membership roll. She could have baked a cake for a church function, got gotten her name in the newspaper because of that. And so those are just some things to think about. A local specialty organization like the FCE or the Home Demonstration Club. I know from the archives records we have photographs, we have documents and things that name all these people and what they contributed, whether it was, a sewing piece or some food or something. A local church group. Most of our ancestors were involved with their local church in some form or fashion. And there was women's groups usually in these churches, and they kept some records, or they would have been reported their activities in the newspaper. So that's something to look at. School. Our housewife mothers would always usually help out at school. as helpers in the classroom or to help with cleaning the classroom or whatever is needed. And so that also could be somehow recorded. Maybe a substitute teacher when the teacher was sick.
Or PTA.
PTA, that's another group. Or,
Maybe
that's
a
right.
cook for the road crew,
Or-
because my great-great.
See, yeah. So see, they were housewives, but yet they still were in their community. We tend to put our female ancestors in the home and we leave them there. They actually ventured out and they did things. Our national groups, such as the Red Cross. When the Red Cross came into being, a lot of women, you know. Another option is, think of the wars that we've had. When our men have gone off to war, who had to step up and do the work in the communities? The women did.
Rosie the Welder.
Rosie the welder.
Rosie the Riveter, I'm sorry.
Riveter,
And the riveter and the whatever else. So yeah, we don't forget those points in times too. Unfortunately, sometimes when the men came back, they lost their jobs back to the men.
My mother did.
Yeah. But those are an important part of our female ancestors' lives, and we should record it and we should research it. On the next page, this is one I'm sure that we've all encountered. Overcoming the Mrs. hurdle. How many of us have been reading an obituary or some kind of document and we're searching for a maiden name of our female ancestor or even just a first name, and she's always listed Mrs. John Brown. And you finally get another record and you think, oh, finally I'm going to get it. And you start reading and it's Mrs. John Brown or Mrs. Brown. Yes?
My mother's tombstone. Edith Bessie Wilson, or no, yeah, wife of Forrest Brady Wilson.
Right. But at least you have the whole name. A lot of documents, they're just referred to as Mrs. or wife of. I know that...
Absolutely, that's not an old practice. I mean, that practice is still around. I mean, I'm looking at one
It is.
From the 1980s and
it is.
80, you know, late 80s, and they're still listed
Right.
as.
Our female ancestors were usually mentioned by this type of style, Mrs. John Brown or Mrs. Brown, in documents and records. Do not let this stop you in your research tracks. The fact that she is mentioned at all in some records is a great thing. The custom of the day up until the baby boom generation, which it has in some areas of the country, it's followed more as a respect thing, I think. But I've noticed that right about the baby boom generation, or maybe the women's movement in the 60s, that's when it kind of slowed down. They referred to a married female as Mrs. John Brown. This was not done out of trying to erase her identity, but in fact is a sign of the utmost respect for her as a married person. While this respect was normal to our female ancestors, it can give us trouble in our research. If you are researching a female ancestor and looking for her first name and or her maiden name, and you run across a record that is mentioned in, she is mentioned in and she is listed as Mrs. John Brown, that can be very discouraging. But don't let it get you down or discouraged. Be glad that she is mentioned at all. I have seen records where she's mentioned as the wife. She's not even Mrs. John Brown or Mrs. Brown. It's just the wife or the mother. So be very, very grateful that she's even listed. I really want to talk about women and their position in society. And it's important to understand that, not that we should agree with it, but understand it in our research. Women, up to a certain point, couldn't even own property. You know, they could not be included on deeds and property. They had limited rights. And an example of that is actually in my family, my great-grandmother, this was done in the 40s, late 40s. Her husband, actually, my great-grandfather, he wanted to be with another woman. And so he petitioned the court and had her declared mentally insane and had her committed to an insane asylum. She had 14 children. My grandmother was the last of those 14 children. I thought, well, no wonder she was insane. But my grandmother tells me the story that, of course, she was the youngest. She was still living at home. She had just graduated high school. She had older brothers and sisters that were already married out of the house. She remembers the day when they came to get her mother. And they drug her out of the house and they carried her off to an insane asylum. And I have the papers, the court papers, where he had her committed, and he went off and married the woman he wanted to marry.
How long did she stay there?
15 years. Then they declared her sane, and she got out. She lived another 20.
I know, I thought it.
And the way they were, the way they were.
And so, but it happened because the husband had all the power. This was in Ohio, so this wasn't even like in the South. Women are actually traditionally treated worse in the South. But yeah, he just went to court and said she's insane. The judge says okay, and they carried her off. And I asked my grandma, I said, well, what about your brothers and sisters? They were older and married. Couldn't they not have stopped? She says, no, what he said goes. And the judge agreed, because the judge, you know. Sorry, men, I'm not trying to bash men. But it was just what happened. And so she was in this insane asylum, which was the top of an insane asylum, because I've done some research where they grew their own food, made their own clothes. It was, I don't know what you would call that. Not when we're in a straitjacket or anything.
Okay, it wasn't a snake pit.
No.
From the movies.
It was it was like a work farm or a working, you know. But then she was there. Yeah. And so I have the little discharge card where she was discharged, and it just says on this date declared sane and released.
Well, I'd like to have one of those. Big card carrying, you know, I pull it out every once in a while.
And she went home and she lived a normal life for another 20 years.
We could have
And she died, you know, 1977, I think it was. And my grandma says she was just fine. And she was fine when she was taken away. But the fact that he was able to go to court and say that happened. And so, looking for our female ancestors in records like deeds and things, like in tax records, normally they're listed under the male's name. Now, if a male is deceased and he leaves an estate, you might get Mrs. So-and-so, widow of. But very rarely will you see a woman's name associated with tax records, because it is associated usually with property, because they couldn't vote either. Which means they couldn't pay a poll tax either to vote. Women got the right to vote when?
1921, 22.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah, it was
Yeah.
right within that period. I'm trying to think when.
So, you know.
Probably pretty
Can't
close.
remember that.
Well, I can, but I'm tired.
It is hard.
But,
August 18th, she can remember when her
1920.
mother-
Oh, absolutely,
And it
absolutely.
was
It was
really
20,
good thing.
was it 20?
The 19th Amendment to the Constitution
Yes.
was ratified on August 18th, 1920, and American women the right to vote.
And then, right, and then you, yeah, but they couldn't vote that day, so that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, you wouldn't know, but you had to go to the year where the elections were held. So you're looking at even and odd and how different things are done.
And believe it or not, I have also heard of men, when this came about, telling their wives, this is how you're going to vote, or you're going to get into trouble. And so, and to this, until, you know, my grandmother's passed a couple of years ago, but she would only vote a certain way because that's what her husband told her she needed to vote. He'd come back and haunt her if she didn't. You know, and so that you think, wow, that's crazy, but that's just the way that it was, you know. Your female ancestors, like, I just think that they're very, very important. One of the things, I think if I put it up here or not, I didn't. Today, when you research your female ancestors, one area where I think it's very important and that could be of help to you is the DAR. Now, not like I said, not everybody maybe would qualify for it. It's the Daughters of the American Revolution. I actually have Helen Moore here tonight. I had asked her if she wouldn't mind coming and talking about the DAR because it is National Women's Month and we're talking about our female ancestors. So I'd ask her to come and to give us a little more information about the DAR. If you've never thought about the DAR, or you think maybe I might have, talk to Helen. They are ready and willing to help you to even find out if you, Helen?
I'm just going to stand.
Okay.
First of all, the DAR is a volunteer women's service organization. A lot of people think it's just, you know, for women to sit around and say, aren't we grand? Don't we have great ancestors? But one of the things we like to say is it's not enough to be proud of your ancestry. You need to strive to live up to it. So we work really hard. It's a service organization. We promote patriotism, flag education, literacy, veterans affairs. We work very hard with honoring veterans, putting flags out at the cemeteries. We work with other civic groups like the American Legion or the VFW to help honor veterans. We do a lot of work with current military, sending help for them overseas, or recently one of our projects we did, just as an example, when a group was coming back from Afghanistan at Fort Campbell, and then also at, what's the one, there's one in Louisiana, a base in Louisiana. Apparently when they come straight back, they might get there in the middle of the night and arrive at their barracks, and they don't have all their clothes and linens and everything yet. So the DAR provide all their linens so that their beds can all be made up and ready for them, so when they get there, they can lay down and go to sleep and be comfortable and be home and have just enough supplies to get by until all their stuff arrives. So just things like that we do. We work a lot with the VA hospital and provide things for them. So there's just a number of things. But of course, most of the Revolutionary soldiers were men. And so most of our patriots were men, but there were some women patriots. And it's always a really big deal if you can get a woman patriot that's your patriot. And I brought, as a matter of fact, I brought American Spirit magazine. This is the March issue, which is the DAR magazine, but anybody can take it. It's a really good magazine if you're into colonial things. It's a really good magazine. But the three women that they have in here is Elizabeth Freeman, St. Elizabeth Ann Seton, which I thought was interesting since that's the Catholic Church.
Yes,
named
it is.
after her. And Nanyahi, I guess is how you say it.
Yeah, with the
Nanyahi.
Cherokee.
It's Nancy Ward.
Nancy Ward.
Nancy
the
Ward.
Cherokee,
And it
right.
talks about Nancy Ward is actually a patriot of the American Revolution. She's a proven
Absolutely.
patriot. She was a Cherokee, but she was a very important Cherokee woman in eastern Tennessee, and she helped warn Nathaniel Greene and some of their men about attacks that were going to happen, and so therefore she helped in the cause for independence and helped save a lot of the settlers. So she was, and helped negotiate peace, tried to, between the Cherokee and the settlers. So she was a very important
She was.
female patriot.
She was very important.
And then I also wanted to tell you about our state regents project this term. Regents are elected for three-year terms, and so this is the first year of her 3-year term. And the project is we're doing a book across Tennessee, and I think it'll be available in the next year or so. But it's called Tennessee Women: Legacies of Our Great Grandmothers, and it's little articles about women who were in Tennessee prior to 1850. And Melissa helped me out on this, but I think the reason they decided 1850 because prior to the 1850 census, there was so little information on women
Yes.
in the censuses.
The census records before 1850 only listed the men's name, and then each individual person in the household was listed by a tick mark. Like 0 to 5 years, you'd either have a 1 or 2 or 3. So no women's names, well, I'd say no. Most women's names are not listed unless she was head of the household, which is actually not that,
Right.
it's rare.
So we're trying to help with that research by doing an entire book of women who were in Tennessee prior to 1850, a sketch of those women. They don't have to be famous women, they can just be everyday women, but they're all important, and so that's why we're doing that. We have over 100 women in the book that are referenced, and our chapter did one that's a lady who's an associate member of our chapter who lives in Waverly, and her great whatever grandmother was a lady who was widowed during the Civil War, and she went to school and became the first female teacher in Fentress County that was certified, and one of the first 2 female teachers in Middle Tennessee that was certified. And so it tells her story of how she did what she did. She was widowed during the Civil War. Her husband was coming back from the war, had been in a prisoner of war camp up north. The war was over, he was coming home and was killed by a sniper. after the war was over. And as a matter of fact, they buried him and another man in the same grave because they were still being shot at while they were trying to get him in the ground. So got him in there, got out of there. But she had 2 small children, and it's just her story of how she became an educator. Her granddaughter later became an educator for her whole life. So it's a really good story. But there are over 100 of those sketches. We're gonna probably have a copy of that book here at the library.
Good,
So available once it becomes. But anyway, that's
Well, good.
it. So.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Helen.
I have a question. Is your organization in any way affiliated with the Mayflower Hotel in Washington, D.C.?
Not to my knowledge. We're a nonprofit. No. Yeah. Totally different thing. We're not even associated with the Mayflower Society. I mean, there are a lot of lineage societies. There's the Colonial Dames, there's the War of 1812 descendants, or whatever they're called. And then, of course, there's all the Confederacy ones for the other war. Yeah, Sons of the Confederacy, Daughters of the Confederacy, all that. So there are a lot, but yes, there is. There is.
Yes.
But anyway, thank you.
You're very welcome. I just wanted to highlight the DAR because they do such wonderful work, but also because Helen here is local, Houston County. And so if you have any questions about your Revolutionary women or even men and want to talk with her, she is always available. Her and Susan Gould and Mitzi Stacy. Oh, okay. And so I think it's a very important organization, among others, but she's local, and so I'm always trying to...
Janice is also in the DAR.
Oh, awesome. I did not know that. Wonderful. But like I said, even if you don't think, oh, I don't have any, just check it out and see, because you don't know. You might find somebody.
2 years ago, when I came to the first genealogy workshop here, I didn't even know my great-grandparents' names on both sides. I knew like maybe one name out of all of them, and within a week or less than a week, I had a Patriot established, documented, and done. I did it here at the library.
I remember that first night that you came.
Because Susan kept telling me this is going to take weeks of research, and then I'd pull up, I'd go, well, there's my grandmother. Oh, well, there's the census. Oh, well, let me print out this death certificate. She's like, this is not right. This is not supposed to happen. So
that first night, I remember you being here. It was just like, wow, look, wow,
I know.
found this.
I had no idea.
Yeah. The DAR, the Revolutionary War. Also remember your women when it comes to any war. We talked about Rosie the Riveter, but Civil War, this was not very prevalent, but we did have females that dressed as men.
We had them in the Revolutionary War, too.
Yes. And they fought.
Absolutely.
Some of them haven't even been recognized for their service. Some not, because they never were known. But they were nurses. They were women that traveled with the camps with their husbands, or they just, if the camps were there in their community, they would go take care of the wounded. A lot of those records you'll have to go probably to the national level if they exist. Or you can't just do a Google search and they're going to show up. That's one of the things. Not everything is on the internet. But you never know what your female ancestors have done.
On this Nancy Ward article, article I read today, and it said that she was married to a man named Kingfisher, and they were going to fight. Hang on, they were during the 1740s and 1750s. The Cherokee and Creek fought a long war over land in North Georgia, and the Battle of Tallawah in 1755 was one of the most decisive battles. She accompanied her husband to fight in the battle. Cherokee legend has it that she stood beside him in the skirmish and chewed the bullets to make them more deadly. I don't know about that.
Chewed the bullets.
Chewed the bullets to make them more deadly. When he was killed, she picked up his gun and helped the Cherokee to victory. And so for her bravery, she was given some of the battle spoils seized by the Cherokee, including a slave.
Wow.
So, and then she was given a place on the Cherokee. They had women's council. It also said in this article, which I thought was really interesting, based on our subject tonight, that we don't know who her father was, because there were 7 different, like, tribal sections of the Cherokee, and they didn't intermarry within a tribe. So you had to marry somebody from a different tribe.
Okay.
And they go through their mother.
Yes, ma'am.
The Cherokee
That's what I
go
had just
through,
said.
yeah, structured
It's a
around
matriarchal.
7 clans. Cherokee society was matrilineal, and children identified more strongly with the clan of their mother.
There are other cultures that identify through the
There are a lot of
matronal.
and
Yes.
There are a lot of Indian cultures that it is a
Yeah.
matriarchal.
It
type
is, yeah,
society.
yeah.
Yeah,
Nancy
you had to blame
Ward,
that on the European culture.
years and years ago, she was one of the outstanding women that were in the Tennessee history books. And when I taught Tennessee history, we did a whole lot on her and her contribution. She was definitely an interesting lady.
Who was that man? Who was she?
Nancy Ward, Nanyiki. She was.
She has an
Cherokee.
Indian name.
It was her Indian name.
One of the things that the DAR does, it says at the end of this article, is we also, in conservation and all, we preserve cemeteries and grave sites and work very
That's
hard
very
on trying
important.
to make sure that grave sites, and her grave site was actually renovated, even though it was a historic site, it had gone into disrepair. And they had like 15 different DAR chapters in East Tennessee that all got together and
That's wonderful.
got her grave site, completely
Yeah. That's wonderful.
renovated.
Still working on the military aspect. So I would jump up to the Civil War. I would encourage anyone, if your male ancestors were in the Civil War and if they were wounded or if they died, they could have a pension record on file. Now, if they passed away, their widow was eligible to file for a pension as well. And they're called widow pensions. I actually have an ancestor, actually my husband has an ancestor that I researched, and she had been married to a gentleman. He passed away, not during the war. He went through war, had gotten wounded, but then he passed away. She remarried, and that man passed away. Well, she decided to file for a pension on her first husband's service. And so I ordered the pension file. And if any of you have ever ordered pension files, it's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And so you could get 5 pieces of paper or 200 pieces of paper. I got about 200 pieces of paper. When I received this file, I started reading it, and my jaw dropped, because this lady was married no less than 5 times, and I had no idea. Because when you're looking at the census records, there's a lot that can go on in a 10-year span in between census records. And so as I was looking at this, in pension records, the women had to prove that they were married, that this person died, that they remarried, that every single step, divorce, remarried, whatever. So all 5 of her marriages were documented in this pension file. And I never knew that she had been married that many times. And so that was a very good find for me as far as my research goes. I was able to add so much more to her life. But our female ancestors should be, I think they should research almost, if not more, than the males. I mean, to me, males in a lot of ways are easier to research, yes, because they've left more records normally, unless you have one that refused to leave a paper trail, and I have one of those. But females are more difficult to research, like I said, because they're just not listed in the record as much. But like I said, start with what you have either in your home, within your family. Family stories. One of the things that's really come to me since we met last month, family stories. I've seen a couple of organizations that are really pushing family stories. We talked about it at the coffee chat the other night. I read an article by a genealogist that was talking about that family stories that are passed down can be lost within 2 generations if they're not passed down. Everyone in this room, I'm going to guess, has family stories that was told to you by your parents, by your grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, somebody. And not only that, but I'm sure if you have siblings, and I've actually experienced this with my brother because he's 6 years older than me. We had a conversation one day talking about our growing up. And I said, we really had a wonderful childhood growing up. you know, it was just wonderful. I went on and on and on. And he looked at me and said, what house did you grow up in? He was 6 years older than me. He experienced things differently. He could understand things differently than I could. Things happened at different times that I may not have been aware of that he was. So I encourage you to talk to your siblings, talk to your family members that are still living. I mean, there are people that are gone that I wish I had talked to. But I wasn't interested in genealogy when they were living. But whoever's living, you know, no matter who it is, try to get them to tell the stories. Get it on paper, get it on video, get it on recording of some kind. Because when they're gone, whatever memories or their stories are going to be gone. And you don't want to lose those family stories, because once they're gone, they're gone. And then we have what I call pieces of stories. Or we have a story that might have a piece of truth to it. That's okay, as long as you have the story. I always say that most stories, if it isn't all true, there's something in there that is true. And so research the story. If it's a story, I have a story from one of my family lines where 3 brothers came to America. And there's 2 stories that are usually in everybody's ancestry. It's the 3 brothers came to America, or my family were captured by Indians and 1 baby child survived. I actually have both of those stories in my family. But the 3 brothers coming to America, one went south, one went north, one went, west. But the story is there, and it's been published. Now, whether or not it's true or not, it actually cannot be proven, but it's there. You may have these kinds of stories that is in your family. If anything, get them down on record of some kind so that the next generation will know them. And encourage your children, grandchildren. They may look at you, roll your eyes, and say, oh, there she goes again talking about genealogy. One day, there's always one in every family, I say. I was mine. There's always one in every family that carries it on. And so don't ever stop talking to them about it, because one day it'll click, like me. I wasn't interested in genealogy until I went to a funeral here in town, one of my husband's family members. And there was a lady there that had a spiral-bound notebook, and she was going around talking to all the relatives that were there. And I was curious. I thought, what is she doing? So I asked her, I said, what are you doing? She said, I'm gathering genealogy information. This is the best place. At a funeral. I said, oh, so I started looking, and so I started looking at what she had, and I said, can I borrow this and take it home and copy it? I'll bring it back tomorrow. So she let me, and that's what started me doing, and this has been over 25 years ago. And so you never know when it's going to bite you, as I say, because it can be also an addiction. But, yes, sir.
In searching, just call me Coos, that's all right.
Okay.
In searching genealogical records in the computer, if you see a number after a family's name, does that mean that that they're a slave family or what?
What kind of record do you know?
Just a regular genealogical page, and it says on the page family number maybe 450 or 700 or something.
If you're looking at a book of a certain family descendants, it could be a type of way of organizing a family research is to number ancestors. It has nothing to do with slavery or anything like that. It has to do with
no, I'm talking about family.
Right, families. But it's just a numbering system that some genealogists use. It was used more a long time ago than it is today, but it's still used today. And it's a helpful thing to number. Some people think it's helpful to number your ancestors as you do research so that it's easier to refer back. That's all that is.
I see.
Mr. Coos,
I'm 700 and something in the Hannah books.
I was fixing to say, I've got an ancient genealogical program, and what that one does, it gives each individual person a number. So that way it's like a file. So if you find something, you can, we've got, just within our household, we have 2 Jessies. One is my father, one is my brother. And if you're not paying any attention, and even VA does this, the only difference is their middle name. And most of the time, they just put the initial. And if you're just skimming through, it's very easy to get them confused, and those numbers at the end will be hopefully be totally different and not very similar, to where you can easily identify, okay, this Jesse goes here, this Jesse is the son, and go that way. I have got several that have the same name, and I've got senior, junior, the third, the fourth, the fifth, and if you didn't have that number out at the end, you would easily get them confused.
Yeah. Another thing I ran into recently, doing some research on my husband's family, is, in our male ancestry, we have juniors and seniors. I actually, and I don't know if this was just the enumerator doing this, it was a census record where a mother was listed, under her as her adult daughter. But they were listed as her name, senior, and her name, because it was the same name, junior. So I don't know, I don't believe that they were senior and junior in life. I think the enumerator for his own self, and to hopefully to show to whoever he's turning this into, that this is, although you could tell by the age, but he wrote senior beside the mother's name and junior beside the adult daughter, who was a widowed adult daughter living with her mother. And I just recently found that. I've never seen women as juniors and seniors.
I bet that would be more helpful, because so many of us named after their mothers or
Yes.
aunts or
Mhm.
whatever with the
They
same
weren't a
name.
Yes.
Mary, they were an Elizabeth or a Sarah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I
This
think
was
we only
actually-
had 3 names
Yes.
for 200
Or
years.
John.
Yeah, but all the women were
Yes.
Elizabeth, Betty, Betsy,
And these were,
whatever.
and this mother and daughter were Mary Elizabeth. They were both Mary Elizabeth.
When it was Elizabeth, it could be.
And then they also had, she also had another daughter named Mary. Yeah.
Oh, you like a Sarah?
I don't think they had baby books back then with baby names. But your female ancestors, I did not bring any white glove records tonight because I'm starting to run out of things to bring to everybody because we've been doing it so long. But, what did you say?
I brought mine too. I did too.
So what I thought we would do is I had several people, a couple of you talked to me about, oh, guess what I found, or guess what was sent to me. And Miss Pat brought a notebook with some things in it.
Mine are really disorganized.
No,
I mean,
it's okay.
This is before I file anything or whatever.
Okay.
And I just had some things that I always scan. I know Melissa says you do different things and then you throw them away. I don't throw anything away, and that's why my house is like it is. But one of the things that I had in here was, I don't know whether any of you were here when the library used to do the dinner theaters over at City Hall. Were you here?
I saw one.
Well, okay, and this was a bookmark, and I had just scanned it on both sides. And I don't remember whether this one was Murder of the Loaded Librarian.
Oh.
Now, Kay French was the loaded librarian.
Since I've been
Michael was Inspector whoever. Well, he was sort of like Clouseau, you know.
Oh.
And then, I mean, there were different people in it. I'm trying to remember.
Judy Rye was in the one I saw.
Right, and Ann Baggett was in some.
Judy
Mark
Black
Beal
might
was
have
in
been in-
there. I mean, just
Judy may
tons
have
of
been in
people.
one, yeah.
But that's just one of the favors they had on the thing was the bookmarks. So I put the bookmark in one thing and then I scanned it on both sides.
Okay. Now see, that I would actually keep. I would not. Yeah, I'd keep that.
But I keep this too.
Yes. And that's,
original.
and one of the things that
I want you to see the other side of this. That's the whole thing. It's different.
being a genealogist, I'm also the county archivist, and so I'm always trying to educate people about what to keep. I mean, I know a lot of us have boxes and closets and attics and basements and stuff full, and people, they get frustrated or they get, to a point where they don't know what to do. And Miss Pat here has a piece of paper that I would think most people would probably throw away.
Right.
Go ahead.
This is from December 1940, and it was where my parents purchased a radio for $29.95, and they put a down payment of $5. And And there was, I don't think so. There is no text listed on this.
Let's go back to
Maybe it was
1940 and
included in the
live.
price of the radio. But anyway, it shows in February and March and on, until finally the balance was paid on July the 17th.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just kind of a neat little.
But that gives you so much information. Your family under radio. In 1940, that was very interesting. It was a lot rare in some communities for families to be able to afford to buy a radio. And of course, that was, the 40s was when Roosevelt was doing his fireside chats.
Yes.
And everybody sat beside the radio. My father talks about radio programs and how they would sit beside the radio and listen to the radio like we sit in front of the television.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's just all sorts of different things. This one is where it was received of Gilbert Nichols $50 as first payment on dwelling house. And it, I mean, yeah, and it's just a plain piece of paper, just put in there, and that's what a lot of these were. I don't know, there was another one that, and I can't figure this one out. This is one for Erin, Tennessee, June 28, 1941. Gilbert Nichols, $4, and but it's on taxes, So I have no idea what tax or whatever, but it's signed E.H. Halliburton. Some of you probably remember that Halliburton name. Again, it was just some kind of a piece of paper.
But that's how we build our genealogy and our records.
Yeah, and I mean the other things are just,
Yeah. Well,
whatever, But
Helen,
and this was the other one I did
oh yeah,
want to show you.
yeah, I like that one.
This one I liked really, really well. Got several checks and different things that are in there. And this one was made out to Dr. George Boone, 1938. And my dad's signature, and it was a visit to his mother, $2. So that's what it cost
Yes.
for a home visit to somebody back then.
Yeah.
So, they're just kind of neat things that.
And those don't exist anymore, home visits.
Not
for $2 anyway.
Nothing exists for $2.
No.
But that was probably a lot of money.
Oh, yes.
All 1931
And
tax?
I don't know. That's what I kept thinking. I don't know in that.
Or,
Helen, were you
Yes,
trying to
there's
tell me
something
that
going on.
you received something?
But
I
My
did.
cousin.
I received some good stuff in
Would
the
you-
mail this past week.
Would you want to tell us about it?
I'm still going through a lot of it, but
Oh, I saw it.
through the DAR database, I was researching patriots. My mother's, you can find, my mother's in the DAR, and so I found her patriot. Well, you can also see other people who have used that same patriot. You can't see their name and the information from the last couple of generations. People might still be living, personal information. You can't see that unless you're actually a member, and then you can get into certain other information that just the public can't get into. But anyway, I found the name of the DAR member who used my mother as a patriot, and I found out what DAR chapter she was in Chicago. So I emailed the regent of her chapter and just said, just wanted to let you know that would you please tell this lady, her name's Julia Trelease, would you tell her that I used her information that she had already researched to be able to get 4 more patriots for me. So it was, she had done all this research. I wanted to thank her for all the research she'd done. Well, come to find out, our great-grandfathers were the same person. We meet at our great-great-grandfathers, and she and I have corresponded back and forth. She's 75 years old. She lives in Chicago.
Wonderful.
And she sent me a load of information in the mail about, well, first of all, she sent photographs that she had gotten from her great-aunt Sarah, that lives in North Carolina, who's 97 years old now,
Wow.
of great Aunt Sarah's uncle, which was my great grandfather, that I had no photographs of whatsoever. My mother had never seen her grandfather,
Oh, wow.
and she now has seen pictures of her grandfather.
That's so
You know,
wonderful.
which is really neat.
That is really
And,
neat.
but anyway, she sent all this information, and one of my ancestors, a Hollingsworth, it was information from, this particular county in North Carolina where my mother was born, but anyway, it's a Hollingsworth, and it talks about them coming over from, Ireland. Valentine Hollingsworth, of all names, coming over from Ireland, and it's got all the information. One of his sons was a surveyor, and Valentine, first of all, was a member of the Society of Friends, isn't that the Quakers?
Yes.
Yes,
And
yes.
he was a member of the First Assembly of Pennsylvania in 1682 to 83. Served in several sessions down to 1700. He was a signer of Penn's Great Charter and a member of the Provincial Council, and it tells where he's buried. His eldest son was a surveyor and with the help of Thomas Holmes, laid out the city of Philadelphia.
Wow.
pretty cool.
That was cool.
I'm back to the pen, that's Thomas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's William Penn.
Yeah,
That's what I was thinking about, yeah. William
And he
Penn.
was, and then he went back to, that son went back to Cecil County, Maryland, and was appointed surveyor of the county by Lord Baltimore in 1712. But anyway, it's got the whole family history down to where it gets to Zebulon Hollingsworth, son of Henry and Mary, soldier of the American Revolution, married Elizabeth Chestnut, daughter of Jacob Chestnut. So Zebulon Hollingsworth is a patriot ancestor of mine, and this Jacob Chestnut would also be a patriot.
Yes.
So anyway, but it goes down through, so I can get from
That's
you know,
wonderful.
to Ireland. So
Yeah.
that's kind of fun.
And that's another thing about genealogy research that I'll add that will help you is talking with others. I don't know. I think a lot of people that are in this room are on the internet. I'm looking around and I'm remembering. I think pretty much everybody's on the internet. If you do a lot of your research on the internet, please try to search out for message boards. Ancestry.com actually has message boards and things for places and surnames. You know, I usually just go on there and I'll say I'm researching, and I'll put the information if it's pertinent to that county or that area or the surname, and just post it. You know, it may take a year, it may take 2 years, it may take a month, but somebody might answer you with, "Oh yeah, I'm researching that too," and then you can start collaborating. Collaborating is really helpful. My personal ancestors aren't from here; they're from Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania area. But my husband's ancestors here, so I tend to do more of his research here because I can get to records better here. But I still write letters, I write emails, I make phone calls to places up north trying to find and locate records. And I always remind us in our classes that it's not all on the internet. I'd like for it to all be on the internet, but it's not all on the internet. Sometimes we have to actually go to those places or write letters. That, you know, those where you take a pen and a piece of paper and you actually write words and you put it in this thing called an envelope and you put this thing on called a stamp. If you do those, it works.
That takes a lot of time.
A lot of places are going to email,
And I'll
thankfully.
Right, and I'll tell you something that was interesting to me. I posted a picture a couple of weeks ago of a great
Oh, and
aunt.
Facebook. Yes,
On
Facebook.
Facebook. I posted this picture. I found it, and I loved the hat that she had on and everything, so I posted it. And it started a dialogue with two of my cousins that was really interesting, where we shared a whole lot of
That's
different
right.
things about. I had forgotten that this aunt at one time worked for the Nabisco company in Memphis. This is like in the 30s and whatever, you know. But I knew at one time, but I'd forgotten. So in just simply posting a picture and creating this dialogue with a couple of the cousins, there were a lot of things that one remembered that what you were talking about that didn't. That brought a whole lot of different things.
Yes.
And we did a couple of.
Right.
We did a whole bunch on the sides.
Well,
You know,
that's- but still,
once
yeah.
we posted,
Yes.
oh, that's, you know, Edward
Right.
and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Then we did
Yeah.
the,
Well,
the
one-
private chat things and
One
everything.
last thing before our pizza's here, so don't want to get cold. Believe it or not, whether you like it or hate it, Facebook has actually become a very good genealogy tool. There are a lot of Facebook pages for communities, counties, historical societies, libraries, archives, DAR, whatever, everything. So look, do a search, try to find, and surname groups and Tennessee Genealogy Group, and it's just collaboration, and people might help you and do, So don't overlook Facebook. I know some people look at it as a time waster.
Right, but you don't have to do it with just, with people and back and forth with all of that. You can look for that type of
Yes.
type of thing.
So that's a tool that is really starting to become pretty popular, really, in the genealogy community. There's people now that are giving seminars and workshops about using Facebook to advance your genealogy, believe it or not. But it's just another tool for it to help us find what we're looking for. Does anybody have any questions or anything before we end this part for tonight?
Next meeting?
I don't know. I'll have to tell you. Let's look at the calendar. I want to say it's, what's the Tuesday, April? I want to say it's either this date or this. No, it's not that date. It's probably that date. But I'll tell you for sure.
Okay.
And I thank you all for coming. And please, please, please pay attention to your women ancestors. They're important. And leave your mark. Write your story down. I always tell people, write your story down. You may not have lived it all yet, but you've lived a lot of it. So write it down. And we have pizza that has been provided by the Friends of the Library free of charge. So please get you some pizza. And I appreciate you coming. And then if you eat pizza, the computers are open to everybody to do research on ancestry. And printing is free tonight, sponsored by the Friends of the Library. And thank you for coming.